Always a pleasure having you join us. This is the New Times News Weekly Review, where we look at top 5 stories that made headlines throughout the week. I am Lavi Mutanganchu. Now, as we kick off our news review, the Nyarugenje Intermediate Court this week dismissed the appeal by terrorist suspect Rusesabagina, who had challenged the decision by the lower court to remand him for 30 days. Reading the ruling, the judge said that among other reasons on which he based the decision was that Rusesabagina was a flight risk. He added that keeping the suspect in custody will also help him easily accessible to investigators who are still putting together his file before the substantive trial. Following the decision by the court, Rusesabagina is now going to focus on preparing for the substantive trial of the 13 counts against him. Now, in other news, the Ministry of Education urged schools to avoid any form of school fees increase by the time schools reopen. The decision to reopen schools was taken last week by the government, and according to Mineduc, universities and higher learning institutions will be the first ones to resume studies mid this month. Meanwhile, all schools that will reopen will be required to adhere to COVID-19 preventive measures, which raises concerns that the cost of implementing healthy guidelines might be added to school fees. On this note, Valentin Wamaria, the Minister of Education, noted that this shouldn't be the case, adding that Mineduc will work with other stakeholders to prevent it. Still on this press conference, the Ministry of Health announced that about 1,000 COVID-19 patients have been admitted for home-based care. Of these, according to the ministry, over 600 have already recovered. The Minister of Health, Dr. Damien Gamije, noted that the method has been effective so far, and it is expected to reduce the funds that the government would spend on treating COVID-19 patients, including the accommodation fees. Currently, home-based care is given to patients who are asymptomatic and those with mild symptoms, and these patients should not be above 65 years old. Now, from health news, let's take a look at what trended in the entertainment world. The Minister of State in the Ministry of Youth and Culture, Edward Bamporiki, this week drew mixed reactions after he said that he would resign rather than seeing his ministry support musicians with explicit lyrics. Bamporiki criticized local musicians who he said have gone astray, producing music with sexualized lyrics that could mislead young people into sexual activity or promote fornication. He was referring to some of the recent local hits such as Igare by Micho the Best, Samoya by Bruce Melody, Hiza by Mr. Kagame and Bruce Melody, and Wishuhe by DJ Pius and Bruce Melody, among others. His comments drew mixed reactions, with some supporting him, while others, especially young people, accused Bamporiki of being disconnected from the reality. Now let's wind up with sports news. The Ministry of Sports this week announced the resumption of sports activities after a ban period of 6 months, a decision that was by then taken to contain the COVID-19 pandemic in the country. However, all sports activities to resume are supposed to adhere to COVID-19 preventive measures, and all sporting federations or clubs must seek and have signed approval from the Ministry of Sports before engaging in any match. According to the ministry, for the meantime, sports activities such as swimming and gyms will remain closed until further notice. Well, this marks the end of this week's New Times News Weekly Review. Thank you very much for being with us. We remind you that this was just a review. Therefore, for more details on these stories and many others, kindly visit newtimes.co.rw. I am Lavi Mutanganchu, wishing you to have a very good and wonderful week ahead.